Uh-oh. Where'd my screen go? Oh no. Ah! You're probably fine. I was less fine here. All of a sudden my screen just went black. Hey, what's up everyone? That was not the transition that I was hoping for. These are not the droids you were looking for. How fun is this? We've got a new show. Well, okay, it's really the same show, but it's got a new name. It's rebranded. Boom, The Altar. I'm gonna talk about that in a minute. And then I'm also going to be later on in the show joined by, look at this. Oh, Dr. June Young Love is here. Or Dr. June Love Young. I'm so sorry. He'll have to forgive my switching of the names. Dr. June is the founder, or he doesn't have to forgive me. I said he has to. He can choose not to. So this will be fun. This will be exciting. We'll see if he chooses to harbor that as a place of resentment and grudge, or if this is going to be one of the 70 times 7 times that Jesus said he has to forgive me. That's up to him. Anyway, he is the founder of Beloved Arise, which, if you remember, I told you about last week as one of the 2 organizations that I'll be supporting through the sale of my UnClobber online courses. But this is a fun day. I'm excited to be here with you, as I am every Wednesday, but I've been looking forward to this rebrand of the show to be The Altar, and now we are going to get into it and talk a bit about it. Glad you're here. All right, first things first, we've got a bit of, we've got some tension going on in Minneapolis, and I would like to know what's going on out there. So in the pre-show question, I asked, where are you watching from and how's the weather? And the first report I got from Minneapolis came from the one, the only Mercy Morgan, who said, Minneapolis at a perfect 66 degree. Okay, so that was my impression of how Minneapolis is doing right now. And then, I don't know, maybe 92 seconds later, we had Anna Satterdalen coming in with Minneapolis and it's freezing? So, WTH, what the heck is going on there in Minneapolis? Is it such a wide city that you are experiencing different climate zones? Or, Anna, is 66 degrees freezing for you? So if somebody can set the record straight on that. Or maybe Anna is like actually in witness protection somewhere like in the Bahamas, and she's supposed to pretend that she's in Minneapolis. And maybe she just assumed it would be freezing there. So she said Minneapolis freezing. And now I just blew your cover. If that's the case, Anna, I do want to apologize. I did not mean to blow your cover. Really glad to have you all with me. Oh, we got 82 degrees coming in hot in Erie, Pennsylvania. Glad to have you, Melanie. Okay, so Anna did try to clarify. 66. 66, she says, yes, it is 66, but she feels that it should be in the 90s. Okay, all right, I'll respect that. And also, your secret's safe with me. You're in the Bahamas, witness protection. Jesse loves the new look. Thank you. I assume you're talking about that fact that I used a 3mm instead of a 5mm on my beard trimmer this morning. Is that the new look you're talking about? Actually, while I've got you, Jesse, I'm considering shaving this tomorrow, like razor. Like I haven't done it, I think 3 years. I'm considering it, but I feel like every time I do that, I end up regretting it. So I don't know, maybe not. Bethany's in Colorado. Bethany, what's going on? I'm really glad you're here. Colorado for one more week, and it's sunny right now. James Leonhardt, are you really here? Are you really with me? I like seeing your face and your name. Glad you're here. Oh, I feel like we've got a new person in the house. What's up, Tori? I don't know that I recognize your name and or profile pic, so glad to have you here with us, Tori. What is us and what is this? Why are you all here? Well, my name is Colby, and this is a show that I call The Altar, previously known as Perspective Shifts. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, I want to check in with you. This is what I call the viewer sound off. All right, real quick, let me know in the comment section, whether you're on Facebook or the YouTubes, it doesn't matter. I see them all. What is something you've changed your mind on? What is something you've changed? And you can take this question in whatever direction you want. This could be big scale. This could be, I changed my mind on becoming, moving from a Republican to a Democrat. I don't know. Like, what's something you change your mind? You change your mind on that suddenly you don't like fireworks anymore. You changed your mind that you used to really like hot dogs and now not so much. What is something you've changed your mind on, big or small? This could be, I used to not like The Bachelor and then I started watching it and now I do like it. By the way, that's not my experience. I still have not seen any of The Bachelor. Friends with Ben Higgins, one of the Bachelors, but I've never actually seen an episode of the show. What is something you have changed your mind on? Would you let me know in the comment section? And again, this could be big, this could be small. Doesn't matter. This could be theological, spiritual, religious, which is sort of the pocket of the topics of this show. So I understand if that's what you want to talk about. What's something that you've changed your mind on? It's a little bit of sort of on theme for this show. The altar with an E. I almost did a backwards E, but then that was too much. There was too many. It's already a lowercase E, and then when did the backwards E with the other fonts. Our guest, I'm sure, can give me his critique on my font or on my logo because he's got a graphic design background. So Dr. June, just be brutal. Hit me with your best Simon Cowell impersonation. All right, so we got some minds changed on atonement theory. Mercy coming in with real light stuff, just real light. Just sprinkle in there a little bit of atonement theory. Yeah, I can relate to that. I've also changed my mind on that. I remember, Mercy, back when I first started extracting myself from the evangelical world of my heritage, and I discovered that there were multiple different ways to think about what happened on the cross, aka the atonement, like what and why the cross. I remember learning about the different ways, like Christus Victor and Jesus the Exemplar and PSA, penal substitutionary atonement. And I remember, realizing that they were all sort of called theory, like that's just one of the ways to think about it. And I remember the first time on Facebook, so I was in Arizona at a real conservative evangelical megachurch, and I shared a video. I think it was a YouTube video from Propaganda. And so this would have been a decade ago, maybe. And I shared it on with my Facebook followers, whatever. And I said, in terms of communicating the penal substitutionary theory of atonement, I put that word in, the theory of atonement, like this video is amazing. And the people in my church did not like that I used the word theory. Did not like. So for them, they hear the word theory and they think, oh, so you don't actually think Jesus died on the cross. Oh, so you don't actually think Jesus died for our sins. Oh, so you don't. And they contacted the senior pastor with all this concern and complaint because I called it a theory. I remember at the time just thinking, good gravy. Like if we get our gender neutral panties in a bunch just because it's called a theory of atonement, which is just basically a way to say these are one of multiple ways. We've got some deeper problems here. And of course, I think at the root of that for them, well, there's many things at the root, but one of those is that they just weren't aware that these people didn't know, as I didn't know. So grace upon grace, didn't know that the church throughout history has had so many different ways to think about the atonement. And the idea of penal substitutionary atonement, that we are separated from God because of our sin, and that God, as a holy, pure God, demands a sacrifice in order to be okay with humans, and then that Jesus is somehow this perfect sacrifice that allows God to be like, okay, now I can forgive you because this one guy died. It's just one way that people have thought about the atonement. So anyway, Mercy, I'm glad you've changed. Well, actually, I don't want to make any assumption. Maybe you changed to PSA. That would be awkward if you did. Don't let me know. I don't want to know. Okay. What else have we got here? Yes, Amy says God's unconditional love for all people, including those in the LGBTQIA plus community. A great one. That's also one I've changed my mind on as well, Amy. Thank you for sharing that. Bethany says, I used to hate horror movies, and now it's probably my favorite movie genre. So I'm still in the hate horror movies state. I'll call it a stage because it was a stage for you. I feel like it's a state of being by which I shall remain, but maybe it is a stage. Maybe one day I'll change like you. My wife would like that. Shocker, Bethany. You and my wife are similar. Uh, Melanie used to be a cat person. Now you have 3 dogs. That's a great little change there. Oh, Susan, I like this. My attitude toward the possible existence of God. So you've changed your mind on that. So I'm curious, you don't have to say more, but I'm curious, like, is it that you used to have a very sort of firm belief on the existence of God, and now you've changed your mind to be like, I don't know. Or you used to be like, I don't know, and changed to be more like, yeah, deaf. Amy says also coffee. I used to really despise it. Now I drink it every day. I support this change, Amy. That was a good change. Barry Cashman coming in with a vulnerable share. I used to think Ben Shapiro was okay. Now I think he's a jerk. Barry Cashman, I would say you have changed for the better. It's just my opinion. I also think Ben Shapiro is got a lot of unprocessed pain, would be my guess, and a lot of deep insecurities that he hasn't yet worked out. No, Jesse. Penal. 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 Jesse, come on. Hang with me here. Hang with me here. Shane says, Lord of the Rings, didn't think I'd like it. Then I watched the movies and loved it. Lord of the Rings, my favorite movie of all time. And of course, I love the books, read them through multiple times. Anna says, I never thought I wanted a dog, and last week I decided that I have to have one. Now to convince husband. What was the change? How come you're all of a sudden wanting a dog? That's fun. I have really never been an animal person, and then I married my spouse, who is like deeply an animal person. So we have over the years acquired more animals, and I like our dog, but that's about it. I don't really like other people's dogs. And I live in San Diego, which is like the dog capital of the world. There's just dogs everywhere. People take them into coffee shops, take them into bars, take them into restaurants and grocery stores. Jesse, I know I'm 12. It's fine. We all have a little 12-year-old inside of us. Austria. Hi, Danny. So glad that you're here. I was wondering if any of our international crew was going to show up today. I love it. Speaking of international, Adette, my attitude is toward the Bible. I saw the Bible as a weapon that people used to hurt. Used to hurt who I am. Now I see it as one of the ways to understand God's character. Ooh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Odette. I love that. Oh, Tori, what a great share. Thank you. Tori says, used to never be able to open a Bible or walk into a church and never felt accepted. I'm sorry. That sucks. Now I can do both with the help of more acceptable teachings. Freaking hey, man, this is part of why my show is called what it's called, because people change. People can change. Like, change is possible. I know there's this trope. There's this myth that people don't change. And I get where that came from. And maybe on some level, there's some truth to that, right? Like our personalities don't really change. Like, we sort of are who we are in that way. But in terms of how we think about the world, how we interact with the world, how we think about ourselves, people can change, man. I don't think I'd do the work I do if after 2 decades I concluded, never mind, people don't change. I'm like, no, go do something else. Jazz. Hi, Jazz. I feel like I just saw you. Weren't you at my house this morning? Almost every person I've been done with, people proving me wrong is just the best. That's cool. I like that. What have you changed your mind on? The people that I used to be done with. They've changed my mind. I love that. Julie says, I no longer believe. You guys, gals, non-binary siblings are doing some great responses here. This is super fun. I need to get to the other segment of my show, but I'm having so much fun with you. Julie used to no longer believe in heaven and hell as taught to me when I was younger. Or no, I no longer believe. Yeah, I've changed my mind on that too. I think it's another one that's good for changing. Julie says also Brussels sprouts. Yes, I love Brussels sprouts. I don't know that I ever hated them. I just never gave them a chance. Was me. Okay. Jesse, used to believe we were all born heterosexual, but obviously that's changed. And hallelujah, it's changed, hasn't it, for you, Jesse? All right. I'm going to do this now. I'm going to bring a computer on screen, and I'm going to talk a bit about this new show, The Altar, which is really just a rebrand of my old show, but also it's going to be different. It's going to change a bit. And so let me just read this. This is today's article that you can read at colbymartin.substack.com, which is also a free weekly newsletter that if you just put your email address in there, then boop, every Wednesday morning, I will fire off to you an article on my latest writings, generally having to do with religion, spirituality, psychology, something in that frame. And today's post, really, I just wanted to talk about launching The Altar. And within minutes of posting the article, I get a message from somebody who told me that they're an English, I think he said he was an English teacher. And he's like, it should be, there are a lot of bad ideas in the world. Because there's a lot of bad ideas in the world. He's right. I wrote it in haste this morning. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with making mistakes. Everybody does them. So, but that, I think it technically should be, there are a lot of bad ideas in the world. Introducing The Altar, a new live show. That's what you're watching now. The tagline for now is sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of transformation. And it goes a little something like this. There's a lot of bad ideas. There are a lot of bad ideas in the world. Lots of bad ideas. And when I say bad here, I do so with trepidation. Because honestly, who am I? Just some random dude in Southern California? Who am I to be any sort of arbiter of which ideas are good and which ideas are bad? On one hand, I'm really a nobody. And nobody should really put any attention or put any stock into what I think is good or bad. My ideas about what's good and bad are just as relevant and accurate and worthwhile as anyone else's. So that's partly true. But then on the other hand, if I may be so bold, there's a very specific subset of ideas within like the larger world of ideas, very particular type of ideas that maybe, just maybe, I might have a tad more credibility in. Maybe. And then fun fact, as an Enneagram Type 3, which our guest today is also Type 3, we're both awesome. As a Type 3, I tend to think that there are lots of subsets of ideas in which my opinion should matter more. Like this is my default. Like, yeah, I'm an expert on all the things. Just let me know. I know everything. And it can be a bit intolerable. But in my more honest and accurate moments, I realize, okay, I really don't know a lot about most things. But there is one particular arena in which I think I know a few things, at least enough to be able to say, there's a lot of bad ideas. There's a lot of bad ideas. So I've been doing ministry now for over 20 years, 2 decades. I mean, look at the silver coming in here. Dr. June, do you see this? I've got the grays coming in, brother. Maybe that's why I was tempted to shave. It's fine. I'll be fine. I've been doing ministry for 20 years now, and 17 of those have been now in full-time ministry as a pastor. I've got a bachelor's degree in pastoral ministry. I've got a part of a master's degree in theology, which some people, especially my critics, would be like, well, that makes sense. That explains things. Hey, go away. I'm doing just fine. Thank you. Furthermore, so I've got this background. I've got this years of work in ministry, this years of work in the church world, this history of study, church history and theology and the Bible. And then you can even, when you think about how the first half of my ministry life, so the first decade, took place in the conservative world of evangelicalism. And now my second decade is in the much more progressive world of like post-evangelicalism. I'm really excited for what this next decade is going to hold. I don't know what it's going to be, but I've got these contrasting decades, if you will. And why does that matter? Because I think I've got a pretty decent set of data for the sake of comparing as it relates to the arena of religious ideas. So this is where I think I do have one subset of ideas in which I might have some credibility to say, yeah, there's some bad ideas out there. I've got a decent sense for which beliefs, especially from a more conservative Christianity, are just not good. Just not good. Even downright harmful, toxic, and needing discarded entirely, or at least edited, updated, or altered. Come on now. In my opinion, part of what makes life interesting and meaningful is that we can routinely examine that which we believe. And should we discover if we hold beliefs that no longer make sense or aren't tenable in some way, or no longer have value or no longer contribute to well-being, we can change them. Like, that's a remarkable thing about being human. We can change our ideas and our beliefs, or you might say we can alter them. So I've been writing this newsletter. This is how it all, oh, Mercy loves the A in the title. Thank you. I was happy with the A as well. That comes up here in a minute. The altar, is that a homophone? As it turns out, Jazz, I think you know the answer to that. Y'all are getting ahead of me here. I have things to say about this. You're jumping the gun. Okay, I've been writing this newsletter here that I'm sharing. Perspective Shift is the name of the newsletter. I've been writing this for almost a year, pretty consistently every week for a year. And before I go on, can I say thank you for reading it? Those of you who have subscribed, those of you who read it, those of you who comment and interact, those of you who can't watch the show live but go back and watch it after the fact, thank you. Like, it just means the world to me to know that the energy and the time that I put into this is worth it, that people are out there reading it and being like, you get these in your inbox and you do the same thing I do. We all do. Like, do I just delete? Do I archive? Do I just keep on scrolling? Do I hit that unsubscribe button? And remarkably, not all of you hit unsubscribe. It's no small miracle to me that so many of you read it. So thank you. It means the world to me. And by the way, if you do enjoy this, I invite you to share it. There's a little button to share Perspective Shift if you want to, got some friends or family to email it to or post it on your social medias. But I've been writing this newsletter for almost a year. And I don't know, starting last fall, I thought to myself, well, why not take what I've learned from the world of live streaming and just live stream the articles, right? Just put the articles on the screen and read it. Let me just do that as a different way to sort of get this information out there. I've got a little screenshot here of the very first live show of streaming an article. We've come a ways from being upstairs in a bonus room office with really bad lighting. Really didn't know how to dial in the camera. It also looks like I'm stoned. I don't recall being stoned then. There was a moisturizer I was using that my skin was reacting to. But anyway, that's how it started. This is how it's going. But since the whole idea for the show originated as this conduit for the newsletter, I just thought I'll just call the show Perspective Shift as well. But then eventually they got confusing. Is Perspective Shift a newsletter? Is it a live show? Is it a documentary about Australian artists? Spoiler alert, it is. And so then a couple months ago, and some of you who are my regulars here know that I've been talking about this for a while now. I'm like, I need to rename this thing. And so I finally decided to change the name and to innovate how the show was going to work and to grow it a bit, maybe move it beyond just a split screen reading of an article. And so you noticed a couple of months ago, I started bringing in guests, which has been a ton of fun. I started in the month of May when I was doing the relaunch of my book, The Shift, and I brought on progressive Christian pastor Josh Scott, the TikTok preacher recently featured in Rolling Stone, Brandon Robertson, the lifestyle blogger Britt Lively, and then I had this great roundtable discussion with Tommy and Mira and Lauren, which, June, don't you know Lauren? No, wait, different organization. Sorry, you might also know Lauren, but she's not Beloved Arise, she's QCF. But anyway, so that was super fun bringing those on. And then last month, all through June, I had a blast doing my Pride Month conversations, bringing in, we had Ashton Colby talking about gifts of being transgender. We had Justin Lee talk about the gifts of being gay. We had Coach Yema, you can see her there, talk about the gifts of being queer. And then Julie Rogers was on here last week talking about her new book, Out Love. And by the way, speaking of, because Julie's book was all about her experience through conversion therapy and the whole anti-gay evangelical world and coming out of that, thank God. Like that world of conversion therapy and anti-LGBTQ theology, like that's what I'm talking about when I say that there are some really, really bad ideas out there. Ideas that need changing, that need altering. That's what I'm talking about. And so that leads us to then the rebranding of the new show called The Altar. All right, moving on. It's too much on my face. So it's now called The Altar. This is what it is. We've named it. Cue thunderous applause. So when I wanted to come up with a new name for this show, I knew I wanted to keep it in the family of this concept of perspective shift, the title of my book, The Shift. Like I wanted to stick with this concept of highlighting this posture that stays open to change and growth and transformation. And so then I reached out to my good friend, Karen Gilmore, who's a whiz with the words, and said, Karen, I want to change the name of my show. Here's the concept. Just stick this in the back of your brain. So like as your little hamster's running, if anything comes to mind, you can maybe shoot it my way. And within like seconds, she texts me back because it's just her. She's so freaking brilliant that way. And she's like, what about the altar? I'm like, oh, damn. Like not only is altar a fabulous synonym for change and shift, but it's also a homophone. Thank you, Jazz. It's also a homophone for altar, the altar, which for the religiously inclined carries a fabulous little play on words, because an altar is like this sacred space in which sacrifices are made in order to appease an angry God. And I'm not about that belief anymore. I even mentioned it earlier with Mercy about the PSA. I'm not about that belief anymore, that there's no angry God out there whom we need to appease with sacrifices. But I am definitely about the practice of courageously bringing forth things we think and bringing forth things that we believe for the purpose of maybe laying them down to rest. And that's why for now, the tagline of my show, which I'm still workshopping a bit, can maybe clean this up a bit, is sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of transformation. So here at the altar, that's one of the things we're going to be doing routinely, is talking about the ideas that need to be put to rest, the ideas that need to die. The altar. Let's put them on the altar and alter them. Isn't that fun? Okay. So, and you've seen the logo by now. And the A is a compass. It's a tool used for mathematics, drawing, and navigation, which contributes to this idea, this sort of this movement, this shifting, this sort of going in a different direction, mapping it out. So I thought that was fun and clever. And so the show itself is going to continue to evolve and change. Obviously, it's built into the name, but it includes things like, periodic readings from my Perspective Shift article. I may not read the entire thing, but I'll highlight what that week's newsletter is about. I'll continue to bring on special guests. I don't know if I can do it every week, but I'll somewhat regularly have special guests. Okay, James says, keep the tagline. It's perfect. Thanks, James. Tommy says this, an altered altar is what the church needs. Coming in hot. See, isn't that fun? Isn't that fun how that works? Yeah, I like that too. Oh, Adette loves the new name. Thanks, Adette. So I'll have guests. I will have segments, things such as segments like things I can't stop thinking about, or segments called I just learned this. And I'll be transparent and open about the things that I just learned, because I think we need to be more honest about. I need to be more honest about. I do this a lot as a type 3, by the way, with my wife. I will learn a thing and then just act like I've always known the thing. What? I've always known this. That's not true. Viewer sound off, which we did earlier, where I throw a question out there and invite you to engage with. And then reader's mailbag. I'm going to open up an email address for questions. If anybody has any questions for a progressive Christian pastor, progressive Christian Bible reading guy, I don't know. Whatever you think I might have some level of interest or expertise in, or anything else, you can send your questions in, and I'll periodically bring them on to answer them live. So that's it. Oh, and then an altar call. We'll end the show with an altar call. That's right. I said it. I did it. We're doing an altar call, people. But instead of having you come down to the front to accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, instead, we're going to put forth a thing, an idea, something that we would consider maybe changing our minds on. So that'll come up at the very end of the show, the altar call. So good. Anyway, that's it. That's the little announcement that I had today on my Perspective Shift, which is now finally just a weekly newsletter. Go get it today at colbymartin.substack.com. And for now, we are called The Altar. This is what we're going to be doing here on Wednesdays. And I'm looking forward to it. All right. Speaking of looking forward, I knew people would like the altar call. Again, shout out to Karen Thurston Gilmore helped me figure all this out, and she's brilliant. Like Amy says, brilliant. Okay, I have a guest today. I've alluded to him a couple times now, and here's the context for the guest. We haven't talked in a while, and so it'll be fun to catch up with him. And then 2, I told y'all last week that starting immediately, 10% of every purchase of the UnClobber online courses will go to supporting 2 organizations that I believe in and am excited to partner with and support in this way, because they are run by, for, with, like all the prepositions, LGBTQ individuals. And Bemba Press is one of them, and they had recently put out their first book called The Deconstructionist Playbook. Go check that out now. And then the other one is Beloved Arise, which is this gorgeous organization that is focused on LGBTQ youth and faith, youth of faith, youth that are faithful and also queer. I don't know the best way to describe it. Maybe June can help me out with that. So without any more ado than I've already done, would you please welcome to the show Dr. June Love Young. Here he is, everybody. That's the thunderous applause just for you. Hello, Dr. June.
Hello, Colby, Pastor Colby. And you got my name right this time, so that was
okay,
good.
I did. I'm so sorry. I switched up the young and the love, and I said in the beginning, I wonder if he's going to forgive me. So I guess here's the moment. Will you forgive me for mixing your name up?
Yeah, I forgive you.
Yes.
You know, just think of it as love is always at the center. Right?
Oh, I like that.
So, yeah.
I like that. Fun fact, by the way, Dr. Young, I was looking for an image for you earlier to put up on that first screen, like coming soon.
Yeah.
And I forgot the love part of your name. So I just Googled June. No, I forgot the young part. What was it? June Love? No, June Young. I think I just looked up June Young was what I could remember.
Uh-huh.
And one of the BTS members came up
Yes,
just everywhere.
totally.
I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think that's the same. That's not June. if he's in BTS and he didn't tell me, yeah, right. So anyway, that's not you. This is you. And I'm glad to have you. This is you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with me today, Dr. June. First of all, what's the doctor? Where does the doctor come from? What is your PhD in?
Doctor come from? I have a PhD in communication. So I studied interpersonal communication, also rhetoric. Yeah.
Love it.
From University of Washington.
Love it.
Which is where I live.
And you've got a husky, yeah? Right?
Husky.
Okay.
That's right.
And you've got experience / background in the world of graphic design, correct? Is that correct?
Not quite.
I thought that's what your background was.
My background is, so I run a marketing agency in Seattle.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
And we have, graphic designers that work for our firm. Yeah.
All right. Well, what do you think of my logo? That's all I want to know.
I really like it. I think it's clever. And I really like the explanation too, where it came from.
Yeah,
well
isn't that
done.
fun?
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Speaking of well done and bravo, Dr. June, you started this organization, Beloved Arise. And from the time you first reached out and we connected and talked about it, I have been so impressed with the work that y'all have done and your growth and your the way in which you've conducted yourself. And so I just think I love what y'all are doing. And so I would love if you would just take a moment now and share with our viewers now, and then the people who are going to watch this back later, for those who haven't heard of it, what is Beloved Arise? Where did it come from? Why'd you start this thing?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for being such a strong supporter of this work from the start. I remember reaching out to you randomly because, Beloved Arise came out of nowhere. But I reached out to you because of your book, UnClobber. It's one of the first books I read with regards to affirming theology. And you just said, yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to support you all, whatever you need. So I just want to let it be known that Pastor Colby has been supportive of Beloved Arise since the beginning. And so thank you for that. And I am with you in terms of, I'm impressed by what has happened with this movement. The Lord has been doing amazing things with this little idea that a group of us in Seattle, were working on about probably 2 years ago now. And we didn't know how, where this would go. But God was already on the move. And all we've been doing is just kind of trying to catch up. How did it start? Well, it's said that that necessity is the mother of invention.
I
Isn't
love
that
that.
something that people
Yes.
say?
Yep, they do. I've said it
And
too. I'm one of the
have
people.
you said
I
it?
think
Was
it's a.
it
I,
it came
I
from
don't know if
you?
I
Colby
created
Martin.
it. I don't know if I created it, but I haven't heard anyone else take credit for it. So maybe credit's out there. Maybe we just grab it.
Yeah, I actually think it was like Ben Franklin or something,
Nah, he's done enough things. We don't need to give him
or
credit for
maybe
that too.
maybe Alexander Graham. I don't know, but it's been said necessity is the mother of invention, and so we invented Beloved Arise because we saw a serious need.
Yeah.
In particular, a need in the LGBTQ youth community. I don't have to tell you this because uh, but maybe some folks who are watching this don't know that uh, every 45 seconds, at least one LGBTQ teen attempts suicide. Every 45 seconds. That's a statistic from the Trevor Project. It's a recent statistic, just from March 2021. So it's not an old statistic. It is a statistic based on US attempts, and so it doesn't even count uh, the young people who attempt to end their life in other places.
Wow.
That's about 700,000 kids thinking that it's better to um, give up than to do something else. And so that's a need. That's a really pressing need. Like, what is happening with our youth that they're choosing self-destruction, right? And then I was thinking, how many of those young people are in our churches? Like, how many of those young people are sitting in our pews or when we used to go to church, right? Um, how many of these young people are there? And I have to tell you that uh, the stories that I was hearing, this is before we started Beloved Rise, the stories I was hearing of young people in my own church and in churches nearby were horrible. Were horrible. I mean, there's a young man who, for almost a year, um, was depressed and suicidal and attempted to take his life multiple times. And it was because he was holding on to a secret that he thought if it were known, he would be disowned by his family, disowned by his church, disowned by God. Uh, I know of another young person that actually used to go to our church who decided to just walk away from the church, walk away from his faith, because he was he knew based on the teachings of his church that who he is, his queerness, is something that God was just not cool with, and so he just made a decision to just leave the faith, right? Because Christianity is no longer relevant for me because I'm not going to give up my queerness. And stories upon stories like this, even in my own life, I have my own teenage story, right? Where I knew that I was gay growing up, but I decided that it was not compatible with my Christian faith. And so I decided to push it down, hold it in, and just pretend, like live a life of pretending. And so all these choices that young people make, uh, and then sort of the grave consequences of what happens when you hide yourself. It leads to some type of destruction, some type of death, whether it's spiritual death or physical death. That's the need, right?
Can I?
And so
Can
I
I?
started looking around to see if there were organizations addressing this need, and I realized there wasn't. And so
Yeah.
that's why we
Can I?
started Beloved Rise.
Let me jump in real quick with the
Yeah,
need. Uh, 'Cause that's some heavy. That's heavy. What you just shared, right? And I'm sure that there's a sense in which you have lived with this and sat with this, maybe even told a version of this many times. Not that it, not that you're desensitized to it at all, not at all. But I can imagine that for someone maybe watching this and hearing a stat like that and sitting with a story like that for maybe the first time, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. I would actually wager it's so much to take in that possibly your average person might even not, which is to say they might hear the words in one ear and let it go out another, because to let it stop long enough in our minds to then burrow its way down to our heart is then going to ask something of us.
It asks us to sacrifice a bad idea.
Yes,
that's what it asks.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of the number of people who profess the faith of Christianity that are not, well, I'll say it like this, are not bothered by that stat, are not bothered by those stories. And of course they would say, no, of course we are. Like, yes, we love all people. We don't want people taking their lives. We want them to get the help they need, but they are not ready yet to confront that it's the beliefs that they hold that leads to this. It's really nothing. It's the beliefs. It is just the beliefs that people have that are rooted in, talk about it a lot, rooted in bad translations of old misunderstood texts. It's all they are. They are beliefs that people pass on to one another that then cause these devastating consequences. Anyway, so I just wanted to pause there to acknowledge that there might be people for whom, like, we just need to slow down a second just to process. Oh my God, every minute there is a young person who identifies in some way as queer, who is facing the possibility that maybe it's best to just end it instead of live with the pain of being in this world. And for many that are part of your organization and touched by your organization, being in a family and a community that does not see them as beloved. So I feel that need, and I'm grateful that you shared it. So pick it up from there. So then how did you...
The surprising thing to me is that response, Pastor, is, I think, the appropriate response. When you hear that every 45 seconds, at least one LGBTQ kid attempts suicide, we should be horrified. We should be speechless. We should pause and say, what? Right? That is the appropriate response. If you're a human being, that is an appropriate response. And so then, how surprising is it that until Beloved Arise started in February 2020, there were no organizations focused on addressing that need.
Unbelievable.
In religious space?
Yeah.
None. We have, of course, LGBTQ Christian organizations that are focused on adults, right? But those conferences are not attended by teens.
That's right.
They're not attended by middle schoolers. They're not attended, right? They can't afford to go. They're stuck in homes that are homophobic. They can't go to these places. And certainly there are non-religious LGBTQ organizations that are fighting, against suicide, right? Suicide prevention, such as the Trevor Project, which is doing amazing work. But they're not addressing faith issues. And there is the intersection that we're working with. You're young, you're queer, and you're Christian, a person of faith. There's a unique intersection there. And the church has to wake up to the reality that we are complicit in at least some of the numbers that we see from those statistics.
Yes.
And I just don't receive that from my more conservative friends. When I say statistics like this, I think it's too much for them to handle. And so they think there are other reasons for why that person is troubled.
Sure.
And the number one reason that I hear from these folks is, if they would just choose to be straight and follow God and be true to God, they wouldn't be so depressed and anxious and fearful and self-loathing.
So it's so wrong. It's so wrong.
That's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea, freaking
right?
idea, man.
Yeah.
Bad ideas
So
got us into this. It's not going to
thing.
be bad ideas that get it out of it.
We invented Beloved Arise.
Came
up with this name. Just thought we're just going to do something to introduce young people to affirming theology, and not even call it affirming theology because that might be too technical for some folks.
Yep.
We're going to create ways for them to connect with each other, because psychology tells us that if someone is experiencing self-disassociation, which is what happens when you're dealing with a lot of this internalized homophobia, as you start disassociating with yourself, like I'm not this person. The number one kind of way to address that, I'm not a psychologist, clearly. I'm not a pastor, also. But the number one way is what we've read is you bring them into spaces where they can just show up as they are. It's not even that complicated. They just need moments in their life, moments in their week where they can show up with their full self and not have to hide. They can put down the mask,
Yep.
right? And they can just be who they are. And that, I would say, is probably the most powerful thing that happens in our youth groups, Pastor Colby, is that young people can just let down their guards, be exactly who they are, have fun together, learn about Jesus together, worship together, share their pains together, laugh together, be silly together. For 2 hours a week, they can do this. And that's, I think, what has made a huge difference. Of course, throughout the week, these young people continue to connect on Discord and other smaller group meetings that happen throughout the week. But that's really just the idea. The idea is, let's let young people know that even though your parents or your pastors or anyone else is telling you you are an abomination, you don't belong in the church, you have to do this in order to be accepted by Jesus Christ, that is just one side of the story. There is another side of the story, this vibrant LGBTQ Christian community that says, come here. You are welcome here just as you are.
Yep.
And what we're really teaching here, or what we're living into, is affirming theology, but I actually just like to call it the boundless gospel of Jesus Christ. That's what we're doing.
Yep. I love it. I love it. We need belonging as humans. We need to know that we belong somewhere. We're supposed to. And when I say supposed to, I think what I mean by that is, best case scenario, we find belonging in our family of origin by those whom we come into the world. Ideally, that's where
by design. That's by design. That's what it should be.
I think one could argue that, right? That there is some design to that. And yet, even outside of those who are queer in some way, that is not the story for a lot of us.
No.
So we have a real belonging insufficiency problem period. Like parents, God bless my parents. When I even think about their parents, and like we've learned a lot of things in the last few decades. Like we're figuring out even what you referenced earlier about what actually does the most emotional, healing work is to just be loved and accepted without judgment, without expectation, without condemnation. Like freaking cannot underestimate the power of that. And we're supposed to get that in our family of origin, and we don't. And so even as non-queer people wandering through the world, we all are needing somewhere to we're needing belonging. We're needing belonging, and we're needing connection. And connection doesn't really happen without belonging, because belonging is what allows us to feel totally integrated and in line with who we are. And that's how then we connect genuinely with other people. Is when I'm fully me and you're fully you, and we see and accept each other. So then you are finding this just necessary, like you called it, this intersection of queer and youth and faith. And you're like, that is an egregiously neglected group. And to the extent that an organization can hold space for those and resource them and do just something to move the needle toward belonging, toward connection, it's saving lives, man. It's saving lives.
I mean, literally saving lives.
Yes.
Like literally, young people. And what I always told, kind of our volunteers and our team from the very beginning, I just said, if we can convince one young person that there's a better alternative than self-destruction, all this will be worth it, right? Because the Bible tells us that one sheep is worth it. And praise God that we've actually seen dozens and dozens of young people choose life over death, right? Choose life over death. At the end of the day, what we're doing here, Pastor, is we're fighting for life.
That's right.
We're fighting for life.
Have you
Yeah.
been able to connect with churches and create partnerships with churches so that you're maybe, because right now you're, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're just, and I don't mean that, and you're solely a digital virtual
Mhm.
entity, if I believe that's
Yes.
correct. Are you doing anything, or do you have any plans to sort of try to connect into maybe some more physical, tangible, local church sort of stuff?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting when we started. We started February 2020, right before the
Cool, cool,
pandemic.
cool. Great timing, great timing.
Right. And, you know, I think the pandemic actually helped us in that it created a world where it was okay to be connected online. Even
Yeah,
like a youth group online, I think before the pandemic, I was like, what? No, you can't have a youth group
man,
online. Like,
good
how are we going
point.
to play dodgeball?
That's right.
Like, we have to play dodgeball, right? Um, and the pandemic was like kind of created this atmosphere where like, nah, we can do this. Like, Zoom can do, you know, can do this. And so it, and now that we've, you know, we're kind of like digital first, right? Like that's the design of this organization is that we would be digital first. The reason for that is we're small, and so we need our resources to scale,
Yeah,
you know, in a big way.
yeah.
And if you can imagine, like if we're wanting to start youth groups across the country, imagine how expensive that would be. Instead, we brought it online, and now we reach literally hundreds and hundreds of young people. Um, about 90 to 100 kids come to our main youth group on Monday evenings from all over the country, from all over the world.
Wow.
We have people from South Africa, from Europe, from South America. We just they just come from everywhere, right? And it doesn't cost you know really anything in
Right,
terms of like
right.
right because they just click a button, they join us on Zoom. So during the pandemic, I think it really flourished, and we won't ever stop. I can't see us stopping online gatherings because
Nice.
a lot of young people don't have communities that are affirming within hundreds of miles around them, right? So we're always going to have that lifeline of online. I do think we will need to explore in-person gatherings because
Mm,
the gospel is flesh. You know, it's like being embraced and seeing people and being together.
yeah,
So we're going to explore that, and I think that would work best with churches. You know, with churches that are already affirming, that have small youth groups. So we're looking into creating a church sponsorship program where not only can church sponsor us financially, but we can also help train churches and youth pastors to start belovedized youth groups that are local and that are you know, in person. Maybe even using the belovedized brand to kind of create a little bit of trust and so we're working on that. And you know, if you're a church out there listening to this and that's something you're interested in, please reach out because I do think that all churches that are affirming have a role in playing in helping this in solving this problem, you know,
yes,
this need,
yes.
this serious need. Yeah.
I love that.
I also want to just say something to if there are any parents watching. I want to say something to parents. I've been actually meaning to write something about this, but and I don't know if you are a parent who has a queer kid and you're having a struggle kind of accepting this. I just want to say to these parents, do you believe that your kid deserves agape love, unconditional love? Do you believe that your kid deserves that warm hug, that embrace, that I love you no matter what, I'm never going to let go of you? Do you believe that they deserve that? I would hope that every parent would nod and say, absolutely, I believe my kid deserves that. And so then my message to that parent is if you're unable to do that with your kid, for whatever reason, your theology prevents you, you know, you're unable to sacrifice, you know, your theology for your kid. If you're unable to do that, don't forget that you still believe that your kid deserves that and make sure that they have people in their lives that can do that for them, that will love them unconditionally. At least do that. Even if you're unable to,
Yeah,
make sure they have an uncle, make sure there's a youth group that's affirming or something that will embrace them and make them
yeah,
feel warm
yeah.
and loved no matter what, because they do need that. And I think you believe that too, even though you're not able
Yeah.
to provide it.
That's that's brilliant. I love that. I love that.
You know, I'm a dad, so
Yeah.
I know how I feel
That's
about my
so good.
kids. And no matter what, I want my kids to be happy and feel loved, and I think parents who are not affirming also feel this way. They say some horrible things to their kids. They kick them out of their house. But I hope that deep down inside they still believe that that kid deserves the warmth of unconditional love.
Yeah. So how courageous would that be for a parent to name that, to accept that, and to allow that to come from a different source from them? You know, like that's
A
just
different source.
that is what it's kind of a beautiful third way. I'm gonna have to sit with that a bit more. It initially strikes me as a beautiful message of a third way of like, look, if you're not there yet, but you believe that your child deserves it, could you imagine maybe them getting it from a different source? Like,
Yeah.
could you?
Like Beloved Arise, for example.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I love you. I love the work you do. I want to invite everybody to go follow Beloved Arise. I believe the Instagrams is where you do most of your holy damage in the world, right? So go follow them on Instagram. Go check out their website. Look at all their beautiful resources. And if you know any queer youths that need belonging and love and connection, get them connected to Beloved Arise.
Yes.
We have ways to solve these problems, or at least to try. And God damn it, we better try. If we're not trying, then what are we doing? Why? Okay.
Yeah, the 45 seconds is unacceptable.
Yeah,
We
it really is.
We cannot accept that.
It really
so
is.
we have to try.
It really is. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with me today.
My pleasure.
I
My
really
pleasure.
like you. I hope we keep doing stuff together. All right.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
So that is Dr. June Love Young. Yes, somebody said, is that the guy that started? Who was that? Was that Colton? Yes, that's the person behind. That is the originator of Beloved Arise. So wonderful human, wonderful organization. All right, before I let you go, it's time for this week's altar call. So the altar call is the time in our show where I invite you to raise your hand if you're ready for change. Like, let's look at something, let's consider something and imagine, is this an idea that needs to be laid down upon the altar and sacrificed and let go of so that we can make a shift for the sake of transformation for the better? So here's my altar call for us for today. Some of you have surely already seen this, but the International Federation for Aquatics that controls all of the international swimming competitions, such as the upcoming Olympics in Tokyo, have decided that the specialty brand of head caps for swimmers, designed by the company SoulCap, and you can see their motto right there: "Big hair deserves big hair." They decided that these specific caps will not be allowed in the Olympics because they do not, quote, fit the natural form of the head. So the goal with SoulCap organization is to create special types of swimwear, primarily for those of African descent that have an entirely different type of hair. Like the structure, the makeup of the hair is unique and different from, for instance, this. And so these soul caps are designed to hold that better and to shape that better. And then the freaking FINA, Federation International, whatever it is, said, no, we're not going to allow those because they don't quite, quote, fit the natural form of the head. Now, they've received a lot of backlash, as they should. And so I just looked today and I saw they have they put out a statement the other day, and you can see the highlighted section there. FINA, which is the International Federation, is currently reviewing the situation with regards to SoulCap and similar products, understanding the importance of inclusivity and representation. I hope this is leading to something. Like this is a start, right? They say, oh, okay, so we are hearing and we're listening and we understand the importance of this. Now, I hope it'll actually lead to substantive change where they will let these caps, these soul caps in. I cannot imagine they give any sort of competitive edge. So you can maybe remember a couple of years ago where they outlawed, I think it was certain types of bodysuits. And I get it. They, international sporting agencies have to create some parameters for what's acceptable and what's not. And there's always going to be those just on the outside of what's acceptable that's going to feel like the line was drawn too early, that this piece of equipment should be fine and it's not. Like, I get it. There has to be some, but this is just absurd. This is just freaking absurd to say that it does not, quote, fit the natural form of the head. So my altar call for today, what's the call? The call is this: stop seeing white as normal. When you say it doesn't fit the natural form of the head, basically you're just saying it's different from white people. And now you're equating whiteness to normal and to natural. And that's got to stop. That is an idea that needs to be sacrificed. That is an idea that needs to be laid down the freaking altar and just said goodbye. We get rid of you. And maybe in this case, it will appease God. Do you ever think about that? Maybe in this case, it will appease God. So that's my invitation for you today as you go from here, is to stop seeing white as normal. Any way that you think about this term normal or natural or usual, if you're able to at all trace it back and say, am I starting this from a perspective as a white person and deciding that this is what's natural, this is what's normal, then that needs to die. That needs to die. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out with me for my inaugural edition of The Altar. It has been incredibly fun to be with you on this platform for almost a year now. And thank you for showing up today. Thank you to Dr. June for his organization. And thank you for joining us today in this. Yes, I agree, Tori, with your comment there. Oh, Tommy says, I miss laying on of the hands to share the Holy Spirit. I love that when you can name parts of the previous places from where you were at, maybe spiritually, religiously, and be like, that's a thing that I do miss. There are things that I'm glad to leave behind, and other things that I do miss. So thank you, Tommy, for sharing that. All right. You're welcome, Melissa. Thank you. It's good to have you today. Mercy, thanks for the love. I love the new show too. I'm excited for what it can be and what it can do. And if nothing else, to end the confusion over perspective shift, it is now just a weekly newsletter and also a documentary about Australian artists. All right, that's all I got for you. Oh, no, I don't. I lied to you. Please come back tonight. Look at what's happening tonight on the Kate and Colby Show. The polygendered drag queen preacher known as Flamey Grant is coming on the Kate and Colby Show tonight. And when I mean coming on the Kate, I actually mean she's going to be here in person. It's going to be our first in-studio guest at the Kate and Colby Show. So whatever you do, set an alarm for 4 hours from now. Holy cow, 4 hours. I got to take a nap. Come back tonight, 7 p.m. Pacific. Hang out with Kate and I as we took the month of June off, and now we are coming in hot. We've got a whole lineup of like 12 incredible guests, and it all kicks off with the one, the only, Flamey Grant. All right, that's it. I'm out. We'll see you guys next week.